I'm Richard Goodall. I'm from Terre Haute, Indiana. I've been a janitor for 23 years. The kids call me Mr. Richard.
The AGT champion and winner of $1 million is Richard Goodall!
When a janitor sang in the halls of Vigo County Schools in Terre Haute, he never saw huge life changes coming his way. But when that one moment of losing himself to the music was caught on camera, everything changed. Richard Goodall went from mopping floors to dazzling a crowd on America's Got Talent. But at 56, the singing janitor finally confessed to everything fans suspected all along. What exactly has he been hiding for so long? Was his revelation worth the wait? Join us as we discuss Richard Goodall, admitting what everyone suspected all along. The janitor no one saw coming. Richard Goodall was stuck in the same unforgiving routine for 23 years, working as a janitor. One rusty bucket after another, he was stuck in a loop of mopping the same old floors of Vigo County Schools in Terre Haute, Indiana. But even in that painful reality, he was not the type to ever take his frustration out on a student or become irritable while on the job. It left most fans wondering how a man who had been cleaning since the peak of his adult life survived the harsh realities and stabby jokes of high school students without breaking. While there was rarely any real answer to that question, if anyone close enough to him might have an answer, music was that one thing that kept him going. But singing in high school hallways with a janitor uniform and flat cap was barely the sign of a man who thought he had life figured out. But the melodies were not just getting him past his job in the school. It became a real part of his whole person. From singing in choirs to performing in karaoke and joining gospel trios, music really did seem like the dream for him. Fast forward to 2 decades into his job at the school, he had already built a reputation as Vigo County's singing janitor. For a while, that was just enough to keep him comfortable. But in November 2022, everything changed. It all started with the school teachers and students giving him a chance to perform on stage at a school assembly. Already, they could tell that he had as much talent with a mop as he did with a microphone, but not even they were sure how far it stretched. One viral performance of Journey's Don't Stop Believin' caught on camera was all it took to set him on a path towards the one thing he was really good at: a music career. But it didn't come easy. In fact, it was the very beginning of an arduous journey, where he had to jump through hoops the size of America's Got Talent. While he wouldn't be the first man in his 50s to take on a talent show, there was only ever one real guarantee. The judges would crack down hard, and he just had to stand there and take it. But does anything truly faze a man who has had his whole life stuck in a loop for over 2 decades? One step forward. Everyone who ever really knew the quiet 56-year-old has always deemed his voice too big for the small rooms he appeared in. In fact, he had once tried to get in on The Voice, auditioning, and hoping for an email, a phone call, or just anything at all, but he got nothing back. Maybe that might have been quite enough to faze anyone else. But for Richard, it's just another setback, no big deal. He did not throw any tantrums. Instead, he kept the janitor gig. 2 years after his viral video belting the classic rock song at the top of his voice, his fiancée at the time, Angie Vanovan, nudged him to try for America's Got Talent. At first, he did not imagine the possibilities of what he could achieve if he tried. But when Angie turned on the heat, and the students at the school he's worked in for decades continued pushing for it, he finally took that step. And not even he saw that coming. On stage, he was a bag of nerves, breathing in hard and deep, hoping to get it all out before letting out that ranged, tenor, raspy rock voice he came in with. For the first time, a bigger stage and a much larger crowd got a taste of that same voice he had been serving up at Vigo County for 23 years. As expected, the crowd went wild for Richard, and he got the highly coveted golden buzzer. Could his whole night have gone any better? But that was only his first real step toward fame, and it was only the beginning. Right after his famous golden buzzer moment, his story as a janitor paired with that amazing voice had a horde of fans gathering behind him. It wasn't really that hard to tell that staying in California was not going to be easy on a janitor's salary. But aside from his financial constraints, fans suspected something rather disturbing in his speech on the stage right before he sang, leaving more questions than answers. How does a 55-year-old man claim to have his tight-knit friends and fiancé to call when he gets the buzzer? Fans noticed the obvious absence of any parent in his speech, whether dead or alive. Just nothing. Was it just some oversight on his part? Or was he truly implying something more sinister? Even though the suspicion festered like an open wound, fans really loved what they saw. The narrative of a man who rose from zero to hero just seemed too good to pass up for a theory that may or may not be true. But how did all that play out anyway? The first big win. For a man who had lived in a consistent cycle of mopping floors for over 2 decades, he had learned to appreciate the little wins and take life as it comes. So, from the first golden buzzer, the show became more than just a competition for him. He treated every opportunity on that stage like a gift. Almost like a perfect moment that he could share with those who truly appreciated him for who he was, even in his 50s. In a steady progression from the audition, he performed songs that carried a lot of meaning in his life. From dedicating Michael Bolton's "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You" to Angie, to the fearless "Eye of the Tiger" performance, and Journey's "Faithfully" in the finals. He was simply cruising through every stage of the competition until he won the 19th season of America's Got Talent. And it gets even better. For the first time in 5 years, he was the only singer to have won the show over specialist acts like comedians or even ventriloquists. Suddenly, the singing janitor was more than just some name he was called. He became a symbol for every person out there who still wanted to chase a dream they have always had. Without a doubt, it was his first big win, and that came with $1 million prize too. But just as his spotlight shone on him, it revealed more than he wanted. Obviously, he had never really gotten a shot at fame. Maybe the 2022 viral TikTok video that nudged him towards America's Got Talent might count for something, but it didn't come with $1 million attached. Now he was in a new tax bracket and looking to get married to the woman who set him on the right path when all was lost. But even in the foggy cloud of fame, some critics saw through the mist. The questions had often been stated right in the face of most fans, but for some reason, no one really asked. It was almost as though the zero-to-hero narrative was too good to be tampered with. But it wasn't long before the unanswered questions started to leak through this perfectly crafted image, and fans demanded answers. Fame came with pressure, and for the first time, he felt the difference between mopping floors and suddenly being a part of the 1%ers. And the real pressure came from his public decision to marry Angie. At first, Angie's angle as that one woman who provided the needed push seemed good enough to swallow for most fans. But after the competition, critics questioned how a man in his 50s was having his first marriage. What did he do all his life? Although the questions were basic, it wasn't too hard for critics to form an opinion from them. Music obviously never really worked out until winning in 2024. So, did he simply give up on love? Until recently? The speculations were endless, and the rumors were unforgiving. Was there really a completely different man hiding behind that raspy tenor rock voice? The pain that formed his voice. Richard was never just a slacker who chose to mop floors at his peak and somehow found luck in his 50s. Once, he sang side by side on stage with a gospel band. Obviously, it wasn't exactly a million-dollar job, but it paid the bills, and according to him, music kept him centered. As most fans had guessed through his song selections, which were mostly about never giving up and confronting one's fears, behind the scenes, he had really been to hell and back. And it all started well before 2021. When the COVID-19 strain hit so deeply in 2020, his little bands, where he found some peace every time he wasn't mopping the floors, suddenly collapsed. Just like tons of businesses around the world at the time, his music career was also caught in the bleak hands of the virus. But it can get even worse, and it sure did for Richard. While Angie's presence had gone through some serious level of social media scrutiny, Richard finally revealed answers to the question that really plagued his critics. He was once married to Patricia Sue Goodall. She was the one woman who weathered the storm with him. She saw him through every disappointment and darkness in his adult life. But in 2021, she gave in to cancer. However, it wasn't that simple for him. While she struggled deeply, he provided her personal care at home, helping her fight the terminal kidney cancer that plagued her at the time. Even though he knew the time was running out, he saw it through and never left her side. "It nearly broke me," he confessed about her death. At the time, he spent most of his time at a karaoke bar, drowning his sorrows in liquor and music every night. And just like that, he sang his heart out of depression. Patty's death was indeed a trial by fire for Richard, but somehow he kept showing up at work and doing his job. It was almost as though nothing happened. Perhaps another man could have been shattered to smithereens, but that's not how Richard is built. Having lived a difficult life since time immemorial, he had built his whole life around a disciplined structure that kept him whole. While most fans sympathized with his broken heart, some were just inspired by how he picked up the pieces with Angie's help without falling apart. But that wasn't all, was it? Although his life was hard enough as a janitor, and he also lost his wife in 2021, the deepest wound on his heart circles all the way back to the trending questions that dominated social media after his audition. Why did he never really talk about his parents, let alone talk about sharing his achievements with them? For a man who liked to tell his own painful story, it just seemed odd that he never really brought that up. What really happened to his parents? And did he finally tell the truth about them? The big reveal. While the death of his wife in 2021 continues to play like a recurring motif around his life, there is a much deeper scar that he had harbored in his heart for a long time. Even longer than he had worked in the field, he had worked as a janitor. At the prime age of 56, there just wasn't that much to keep away from the media. At least, that is how he saw it. So he shared a secret that fans had mostly suspected all along. When he discussed himself on the America's Got Talent stage without a mention of his parents, that split hairs among his fan base. While some theorized that they might be long gone, others believed that he might have been an adopted kid who really had it in for his foster parents and would rather create a scene than speak about them at all. However, his story carried way more baggage than speculated struggles did. Just 10 months after winning the prize, fans started to press for answers, dying to know more about their singing janitor. As the questions piled up, he was under more scrutiny and pressure to tell the truth. Richard never knew his parents. Although he wasn't just another kid dropped in a dumpster, he was given up for adoption by his parents, who gave him no chance to get to know them. But it gets even worse. Unlike some adoptees who had a photograph, letters, or just some family heirloom left for them, his parents only ever left him with doubts and disappointment. But Why has he never looked for them until recently? For Richard, being abandoned with almost no second thought to help him trace his way back to his parents sent him a clear message. They did not want to be found. That left a void in his heart so vast that nothing could really fill it. While some fans immediately saw that black hole in his emotionless eyes when he talked about his personal life on stage, believing that it might never really be filled again, Angie was yet again in his corner. She suggested to him that anything was possible if he really did try to achieve it, so she nudged him towards finding his real-life parents using ancestry. As he did with her America's Got Talent advice, he argued with her over it, claiming it was a wild goose chase to ever really find his parents using some web application. However, he took the risk, and it paid off massively. In August 2025, he posted a picture on Instagram of himself and his father, Hubert, a retired K-9 police officer in Indy, not to mention a retired Army veteran. But the real kicker was that he had no kids. Yet he never came looking for Richard because he never even knew that he existed. While he did find a whole new reality when he found his real father, fans still wanted answers to the big question. What next for the 56-year-old? A legacy of pain, reconnection, and melodies. Not many people around the world recover from the pain of failed dreams, losing a wife to cancer, and finding their long-lost parents again. But none of it was ever going to happen without Angie. She was the silent muse, impacting a lot of his artistry and decisions. Think about it. She is the reason he took the America's Got Talent challenge head-on. She is also the driving force behind finding his real father on Ancestry, and even that rebound girl that he met just a year after he lost his first wife, Patty, to cancer. But somehow, she had come to stay and suddenly spearheaded a resurgence of his music career and the death of his home, Vigo County Schools, and back-home routine. As if he did not already have enough reason to be in love with her, she supported his music so much that she followed a fan page on Facebook in 2022 and came to the same bar where he performed with his band just to see him sing. On September 18, 2024, just 6 days before he was announced the winner of America's Got Talent season, they got married. But right after his massive win in 2024, the obvious question was right there waiting to be asked. Will he ever continue his music career? The answer was always yes, and he backed it up in August 2025 with the first release of his single in 2025. Long time coming. And just 4 months later, in December 2025, he had a holiday single release with Jingle Bell Rock. Slowly but surely, fans had finally found out who he truly was. While he had mostly picked songs that reflected hope and perseverance, they were never just songs to him. They were episodes of his own life warped into beautiful melody, and Long Time Coming is a reinforcement of that idea. He shared previews of the song on social media in the months leading up to the release. They say money changes a man, but Richard, he was different. Even before his rise to fame, he had been singing with a band called Sugar Street, performing classic rock and heartland soul music. But immediately after he won the competition, he had unending offers to be a part of new groups. Yet he declined. He kept this solid core of singers he had known all his life and toured the United States with them as a featuring act. Perhaps his true legacy was never really about winning a competition, but proving that hope survives even when life proves otherwise. Do you think Richard's confession was truly worth the wait? Do you think his father really never knew about him? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.